Hi, welcome to the Green Mile Man YouTube channel. My name is Dan Clare and I'm helping to launch this channel on behalf of my cousin Bash Wright from Whitby. To give you the quick and dirty version of events, Bash was, as a young man, an extremely fit and healthy person. But later in life he suffered some health issues. Around 3 years ago, after a 1 year long life and death stay in hospital, which included 3 months in a coma and a whole other catalogue of events that you'll find out about as we go along with the videos, he became a double amputee above the knee at the age of 59. Now, 3 years later, he's pushing himself 1,000 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats with a few additional routes along the way to make up the 1,000-mile mark. He will be doing this completely unassisted, no team, no backup van, nothing. He will carry all his own provisions with him on the chair, buy whatever he needs, food, water, etc. along the way. He may treat himself once a week to a campsite or perhaps a B&B, but that's purely so he can recharge electronic devices, have a good wash. Other than that, he will be wild camping in his bivvy bag, sleeping either in the chair or on the floor by the chair. So that's the quick and dirty version. If you've heard enough and like what you hear and want to follow the page along, then please like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and perhaps make a donation to the worthy cause that all this is in aid of, which is of course Whizz-kids, the UK's leading charity for young children, for young wheelchair users. The links are in the description below. Thank you. Still here? Want to hear more? Okay. So maybe you're wondering what sort of person loses their legs at age 59, has a near-death 1 year stay in hospital, emerges from a coma, and then just 3 years later pushes themselves to do a 1,000-mile journey for charity. Well, let me tell you. As a young man, Bash was a very fit, keen cyclist. He competed in national track championships in both sprint racing and time trials. He also competed in the schoolboy All England cross-country running championships. Later in life, he was an avid weightlifter, taking part in EFBB bodybuilding competitions. And through most of his young life, he also played rugby in the first 15 for Whitby. On top of that, he was an avid scuba diver and was the diving officer for over a decade at Whitby Sub-Aqua Club. So as you can see, a fit and strong man in his youth and through his 20s and 30s. Now, as a lot of rugby players and supporters do, like I do, he liked a beer or two after the game. He also smoked, and that wasn't great for his circulation. Things spiralled in that area over the years, and he started suffering badly with circulation in his legs. And after a long period of Bash perhaps not looking after his health the best he could, his pancreas gave out at age 58. At that point, Bash was subsequently admitted into James Cook Hospital, and from there his health just deteriorated. His body systematically shut down. His pancreas was eroding him from the inside out. He had necrosis in his legs. His heart was going into shock and beating at nearly 200 beats per minute. He was put into an induced coma, put onto heavy medication. He developed then, unfortunately, a C. diff infection in his bowel. He developed blood clots and more besides. They had to perform a tracheotomy for his breathing and put on machine breathing for a machine to breathe for him as they turned up the oxygen and the system to its full capacity to assist as things got so bad. He then developed double pneumonia, and they were pumping green liquid from his distended gut each day. There were about 15 different tubes going in and out of his body. His heart stopped multiple times. The list went on. Things were not good at all. 3 comments I specifically recall from the doctors and consultants at the time were the following. One said, "We're pumping him full of the antibiotic equivalent of Domestos. Nothing else has worked, so if this doesn't, nothing will." And it didn't work. Another said, "We expect a patient to turn a corner at some point, but Bash has systematically got worse for 3 months, and I'm afraid this is the end." And another one said, "I'm sorry, but at this stage people don't recover from this level of organ failure. You should say your goodbyes." So I did, and I made that my last visit. Whilst Bash was in a coma, he also lost his mother, my lovely Aunt Bessie from Slights. That was a sad day, and at Bessie's funeral, all I could think about was that it probably wouldn't be long before we would be back doing the same for Bash. But in a bizarre twist of fate, the next day after Bessie's funeral, Bash's brother, Phil, he rang me and said, "He's only woken up." I said, "What?" He says, "Yeah, he's come out of the coma." I couldn't believe it. Was Bash going to live? I mean, he wasn't out of the woods, not by a long chalk. There was still a list of medical problems to face as long as your arm. The list of hurdles that he had to get through was immense. And least of all, Phil, Bash's brother, had to explain to Bash that whilst he'd been in the coma, that his mother had passed away on top of all the existing problems. And the doctors also had to explain to him that his legs were poisoning him. The necrosis in his legs was poisoning him from the inside out. And so he would have to lose both limbs above the knee. I think any single one of these problems is a lot to face, but Bash accepted the facts and off they came. He spent about a year in hospital recovering from all the various illnesses and ailments and problems that he'd suffered. And it was a very long, slow, painful and arduous slog. I've never seen such a big, strong man physically reduced to a small bag of skin and bones. And he was weak and he was frail. And he couldn't even sit up without help. On one visit, he looked me in the eye and he said, "I'm finished, Dan. I'm finished." But Bash eventually came out of hospital after 12 months of recovery, only for COVID to then strike. He literally battled his way back a millimetre at a time, got released from hospital, and the world of COVID and isolation arrived. And one thing after another was too much, and Bash did suffer further difficulties. But today, Bash has moved on, and has kept moving on, kept moving forward ever since. Unstoppable, in fact. There's a big story to tell here, but Bash will do that for himself throughout the videos. Suffice to say, he went from being a man who barely had the strength to get into a wheelchair to being a man now pushing himself across every corner of the UK. Last year, Bash pushed himself in his wheelchair, and he did the coast to coast, Morecambe to Whitby. That was over 5 days, and it was just for his own satisfaction and his own self-worth and his own pride, to prove that he wasn't finished. Along the way, I met up with him on the journey at the Hopper Lane Inn, and we had a pit stop and a pint of blackcurrant juice on a warm summer's day. That was day 3 of 5 of that particular journey, and it was just something he was doing from his personal ambitions, nothing for charity or anything like that at the time. Whilst we were there, Bash, he regaled a story to me of a World War II pilot that he'd read about, Douglas Bader, a chap who also had lost his legs and was, by all accounts, a bloody-minded individual, perhaps a bit like Bash. Bash acknowledged that his own situation was of his own making, and so he had no reason to moan about it or to grumble about his lot in life. And he had, on the contrary, every reason to just get on with it. There's an interesting story about a young girl who inspired him in hospital. She was having some difficulties and her attitude inspired him, but again, I'll let Bash tell you that story. But in good humour, like Bash always does, he likened himself to Monty Python's Black Knight, and he insisted that his loss of limbs was merely a flesh wound. So Bash removed the handles from the back of his chair so that nobody can help him. He does everything himself, getting in and out of vehicles, on and off buses and trains, takes himself all over the place. When he wants to get up the 199 steps in Whitby, he just folds up his chair and he goes up it one step at a time on his backside, and he drags the chair up after him. He's unstoppable. He is unstoppable. And he's also a bloody lunatic, but he is unstoppable. He hasn't got everything right in his life, have any of us. But I can tell you something, that when that man puts his mind to something, it will happen. So he's not bad. Not bad at all. Now, Bash's latest adventure is to push himself, as I say, 1,000 miles from the bottom of England to the top of Scotland. And he's doing that to raise money for kids in wheelchairs along the way. I'll say there's an endearing story behind that choice of charity, but I'll let Bash explain to you. So, as I said earlier on in the video, if you like what you're hearing and you want to follow us and you want to follow Bash's adventures, then please like the Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and please do click on the link for the Just Giving page for the Whizz-kids charity and give what you can. Okay? Right. Enjoy the rest of the videos. See you soon.